Okay, so today's session is regarding the analysis of your data, the data you will collect during the course of your semester completion, your research project completion. And this is a very, very important part of your research report, the analysis section. So let me share the screen in order to demonstrate how you should start your analysis. Okay. Okay, so basically, this is a simple questionnaire. So I will begin from questionnaire. How to transform our questionnaire from questionnaire form to the software version. So this is a simple questionnaire. It measures consumers' perception regarding COVID threat. So these are the preliminary statements in which you are required to present in order to introduce your research topic to the participants and assuring them that your responses will only be used for scientific purposes, for academic purposes. That's it. So this is a very short survey. It has 5 questions regarding personal information, which includes gender, income, education, profession, and age. And then there are basically 4 variables. The simple framework is like this. There are 3 personality traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and there is a single dependent variable, which is perception of COVID threat. So there are 4 variables. 3 are independent variables, 3 personality traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and 1 is your DV. So in order to measure your 3 independent variables, there are 9 questions to measure narcissism. These questions are measured on a 7-item Likert scale. There are 9 questions to measure Machiavellianism. Again, they are measured on a 7-item Likert scale. And there are 8 questions to measure psychopathy, which is again measured on a 7-item Likert scale. The dependent variable COVID threat perceptions, they are measured by 7 statements, and they are also measured on a 7-item Likert scale, where 1 stands for strongly disagree and 7 stands for strongly agree. So overall, if we count the questions, there are 9 plus 9 plus 8, there are 26 plus 7. There are 33 questions. So considering the formula given by Hare et al., we should have at least 330 responses, because Hare et al. Said that you should have an adequate sample size in ratio of 1:10. 1 to 10 item to response ratio is a very good, it is an adequate ratio. So we should have a 330 sample size ideally, and even if we are able to garner only 200 responses, it is sufficient as well, because Hare et al. Said that our sample size should be between 1:5 and 1:10. Okay, so this is a brief introduction of your questionnaire. Now, how to transform this questionnaire to our software. Okay, so when you open your software, basically this interface will pop up. This is the interface, this is the blank interface which you will be able to see when you open your SPSS version 27, or if you have version 26 or older one. This is a simple interface which you will be able to see. Nothing is there because you have not entered anything. One thing you need to know at the very beginning is the difference between variable view and data view. These are the 2 buttons right at the left bottom of your software screen, a variable view and data view. So I'm hopeful that you are able to see this screen sharing. Are you able to see the screen clearly? Are you able to see the screens clearly? Are you able to see the screen sharing? This is a very funny picture because, yeah. Okay, so we will focus on our software now. Okay, so this is your software interface. You have variable view and you have data view. In variable view, we will put all the information which is present in our questionnaire. Okay, for instance, we have this is our questionnaire here. We have 5 questions regarding our personal information, and we have 33 other questions. So overall, there will be 38 entries in our variable view. So let us start, coding our information from our questionnaire to our software. So the first question in our questionnaire is regarding gender. So in variable view, you will see that there are plenty of columns, but only you need to focus upon 3 columns in the beginning. The first column, the name column where you will put the name of your variable, the column of values where you will code the values, and the column of measure. And rest of the columns you don't need to make any changes, just keep them as they are by default. The information is presented in them. So I just want to tell you that there is plenty of information that will be provided to you in your software, but you should learn the art of picking the right information, the information which is relevant. Okay, so because there is plenty of information, you don't need all kinds of information. So the first column is name. Here you will write the name of your variable, your question, the kind of question, it is gender. As soon as I hit the enter button, all other entries, they are generated. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, you need to focus only on the 3 columns, but let me give you information regarding other columns as well. The second column is about the type of data. So if you click on this particular button, you will see that there is plenty of information here. You are required to specify the kind of data which you are entering in your software. So we have plenty of choices. Is it our data numeric? Is it dot? Is it scientific notation, dollar, currency, whatever it is? But usually in our kind of research, in our field of research, we will be using numeric data. So you don't need to make any changes in it. So just keep it the default choice as it is. The width refers to the width of your columns. You don't need to make any changes here. Decimals refer to the decimal points up to which you want your entries in the software. Keep it as it is. You want your entries to be up to 2 decimal points, which is sufficient. Label is the detail regarding your question. I usually keep this column empty because that detail is already presented in your questionnaire. So you don't need to duplicate this column. You don't want to crowd this column. And some information is already present in the first column, which is the name of the variable, the name of the question, the name of the item. So I would just recommend to keep this label empty. Okay, the next column is a very important column, which is values. Here you would input the coding information. So just go towards your questionnaire. You will see that here you have 2 response categories. One stands for male and 2 stands for female. So here you will put in value the number, and in label you will put the category. So one stands for male. We will just write 1, and in the label we will write the corresponding category which is assigned by number 1, and then we will add it. Then we will add the second value. The 2 stands for female, so we will add the second category as well. We will hit the add button, and then we will click the OK button. That's it. So we are done with the coding of gender. Because there are only 2 options, so we will only be adding 2 options. We don't need to provide any extra information which is not present in our questionnaire. So basically we are just translating our questionnaire to a more software friendly version. So all the information in our questionnaire will be transformed to software version in the variable view. Okay, so the next column is missing value. Here you don't need to make any changes at the moment because we don't know how many values in our questionnaire are missing, especially when you are physically administering your questionnaires. By printing your questionnaires, it is likely that some of the questions will not be answered by your respondent. They might miss some questions. So you need to take care of this thing as well. But in case of electronic questionnaires, you have an option that you put the question as a required question, and the respondent cannot go to the next question until and unless he or she has answered the first question. So in electronic questionnaires there is a less chance of having missing responses, but in physically administered questionnaires there is a high likelihood that you will get missing responses. So this is not relevant at the moment. We will see after a data collection that whether you will have missing values in your questionnaire or not. This column is again columns. Again, this is not relevant. Alignment, again, it is regarding your formatting. You want your values to be assigned, aligned left, right, or center. Not relevant at all. Okay, measure. This is a very important column because here you need to designate which kind of scale is being used to measure this particular variable. So we discussed that there are four kind of scales. We discussed that there is a nominal scale where responses are assigned into different categories, but one category is not superior to another category. We discussed ordinal scale where one category is superior to another category. We discussed interval scale. So this ruler, this scale is basically, indicating the interval scale. So we will be using interval scale when we have interval scale or Likert scale measurement instruments. So for this gender, because we discussed that usually personal information, it is measured on nominal scale because one response category is not superior to another response category. So males are not superior to females, females are not superior to males, there is no ranking between them. So we are measuring this particular variable on a nominal scale. So this is the completion of coding of one question in your questionnaire. Okay, so it just took us, lesser than a minute to, code the information in our questionnaire, in our software. So similarly, we will code all the information in our questionnaire uh, in the variable view window of our software. So let me code another question as well. The second question is regarding income. Let me code it as well. It is very simple. Again, you will write the name of your variable. It is income. As soon as you put enter, all of the information will be, by default, it will appear. We just need to focus on three columns: the name column, the values column, and the measure column. So in the values column, we will go and we will assign values which are given in our questionnaire. So the one stands for less than 5,000 RMB. So one stands for less than 5,000. Two stands for, let me see the questionnaire. It is the value between 5,000 and 15,000. Okay. So the three stands for the value between 15,000 and 25,000. Let me confirm from my questionnaire. Yes, it is. Okay, so the 4 stands for the value between 25,001 to 35,000, and 5 indicates the value of above 35,000. Remember, we need to follow our questionnaire here. And the 6 stands for prefer not to say. So those respondents who are not comfortable sharing their personal information regarding the income, they have this option. So they can choose prefer not to say. This is it. We have completed our coding. But the third column, as I mentioned earlier, we need to we need to focus upon three columns: the name column, the values column, and the measures column. So income, is this a nominal scale or ordinal scale? We know that it is not an interval scale. We discussed in our lecture as well. There is a divisive opinion regarding income. Some researchers believe that it is an ordinal scale because we are ranking. This is the ranking of the income of people. But other researchers believe that although we are ranking, but we are not saying that one response category is superior to another response category. We are not saying that the person who is earning between 25,000 and 35,000 RMB per month is superior to a person who is earning less than 5,000 RMB. Both consumers are equally important to us. Both individuals, both respondents, they are equally important to us. So I actually agree with the later point of view. I believe that income is a nominal scale because we are not ranking our respondents on the basis of their income. We just want to know the information about what they want to share, about their demographics, their socioeconomic status, and how does it affect their shopping and buying patterns. So that's it. So similarly, we will code the other information like education, like profession, like age. So let me code one of the questions from your independent variable. So we have 9 questions from narcissism. So uh, let me code one of these questions. So instead of writing the complete statement, like the first question is, it is not wise to tell your secrets. Because this information is already available to me in my questionnaire, why should I write the complete information? So I will just, now I will leave the space for the other variables. So I will just, the third variable was, I think, education. The fourth variable was profession. The fifth variable was age, and now the sixth question in your questionnaire was about narcissism. So I would denote narcissism by simply NAR1. Okay, why? Because whenever I see the statement or whenever I see this name NAR1, I would know for sure that this refers to the first question in narcissism scale. So similarly, I would choose NAR2 for the second question, NAR3 for the third question, NAR4 for the fourth, and I would use it to code my complete scale of narcissism. So there are 9 questions in narcissism. So I will continue till 9. Okay. So I need to make changes in the first column. I have identified my first column with the 9 questions of narcissism. That's it. I need to make changes in the values column. Okay. So how am I measuring narcissism? How many response categories are there in the narcissism scale? Narcissism questions. There are 1 to 7 Likert scale categories. So 1 stands for strongly disagree. Now let me put this information in my software. 1 stands for strongly disagree. Similarly, I will put the values for other options. 2 stands for disagree. 3 stands for somewhat disagree. Disagree. 4 stands for neutral. 5 stands for somewhat agree. Let me confirm. 5 stands for somewhat agree. Yes. Somewhat agree. 6 stands for agree. And lastly, 7 stands for strongly agree. Okay. So I have completed my, inputting the values for first question. Now, what kind of scale is this? We know for sure that it is not a nominal scale. It is not an ordinal scale. It is an interval scale. Why? Because the response categories have equal distance. The distance between 1 and 2 is 1, between 2 and 3 is 1, between 3 and 4 is 1, and one response is superior to another response. Strongly agree is better than agree. So it means that yes, it is an interval scale. So we can simply copy this value for one question of narcissism, and we can choose the other questions and we can paste it. That's it. We don't have to do it separately for each question. And similarly for this, we can choose interval scale because all the questions of narcissism are being measured on interval scale. Okay, so this is how we will do coding of all the questions in our questionnaire. So at the end of the day, we need to ensure that the number of questions, we have 33 questions and 5 questions regarding your personal information. So we have 38 questions. So at the end of the day, we need to make sure that in our variable view, we should have 38 rows. Each row in your variable view will stand for one question in your questionnaire. So the number of rows in variable view must be equal to the number of questions in your questionnaire. Okay, so I have actually completed the file. It is this file. So this is 38 questions. So at the end of your coding, your variable view will look like this. See, I have done the complete coding here. In order to save the time, I have done the coding of all the variables. All the 9 questions of narcissism are coded. All the 9 questions of Machiavellianism are coded. All the 8 questions of psychopathy are coded. All the 7 questions of COVID fear are coded. Okay. So apart from the person information, all other measures are being measured on a Likert scale. So their values are also completed. So I have completed the variable view coding of my software, of my questionnaire. So the number of questions in my questionnaire are 38, including personal information. So number of rows in my variable view are 38 as well. So variable view is directly relevant to your questionnaire. Now let me go towards the data view. So data view, okay, let me open the practice file, which is the completed file. So data view is basically uh, each row in your data view stands for a single respondent's response. So if you have a sample size of 250, you should have 250 rows here. So in this particular situation, we have 344 rows. So it shows that we have 344 responses. We have a sample size of 344, which is very good enough. Okay, so this is what you need to understand at the very beginning, that the different functions of data view and variable view. Variable view is basically coding of your questions. All the questions in your questionnaire must be transformed to your in the variable view. And in the data view, it is basically your responses. When you get your questionnaires filled from your participants, from your respondents, you code their responses here. So basically, when you get your response, for instance, your first response is coded here. It means that your first respondent was male. The income category of that respondent was below 5,000 RMB. Let me check with, yes. So the income category of that respondent was less than 5,000, and that respondent had an education of 4, and 4 stands for masters. So that respondent had done masters. That respondent had a profession of 3. What does 3 indicate? The 3 indicate that that respondent was an employee in some public sector. That respondent had an age of 3. 3 is basically it stands for between 31 and 40. Okay, so that and further words, there is basically the responses on your questionnaire. Okay, so each row in your data view, it stands for a single participant's response. Okay, so this is how you will get your coding done. You will you will get your questionnaires filled. First of all, you will code your questionnaire in the variable view of your SPSS, and then you will start inputting the data. You will start inputting the data in the data view, where each row stands for a single response. So if you want to know about my total sample size, you can simply see the number of rows in my data view. If you want to see the number of questions in my questionnaire, you can simply see the number of rows in my variable view. So there are 38 questions in my questionnaire, and there are 344 responses in my in my sample. So this is the first important step in your research, that you need to do coding. So so this is the first step, the coding of your data. Okay, so this is how we will do the analysis. This is the sequence of analysis. The first step is coding of your data. The second step is to check the sample characteristics, the composition of your sample. So let us start getting to know the composition of your sample. So I will now use this completed data file, which I have just uh, made, or I actually collected the data, but I have made some changes in it so that we can do some practice for you guys. Okay, so how to get to know about the sample composition? Let us compare. Let us get to know about our sample size, our sample characteristics. So this is our second step in our analysis. Okay, so I will go to this, the ribbon that is in the top, that is on the top of your software. See that you have different options here. Now, this is a lot of information. As I mentioned earlier, that there is a lot of information in the software, and you don't need all the information. So just focus on the kind of information you need, you want to, you need for your research purposes. Okay, you go to an analyze part of your software, go to the analyze part, and uh, go to the descriptive statistics part, and then choose frequencies. Okay, I will again explain this: analyze part, descriptive statistics, and choose frequencies. That's it. So when you choose frequencies, you will see that all your questions in your questionnaire, that is the variable view window, information of your variable view window is there in this particular box. But we just want to get the information about our sample characteristics. So we will just analyze the personal information variables. This is the first step of your analysis. Get to know about your sample. So we will just select all these five, personal information variables, and then we will, transfer them to the, right hand box. So we will transfer the variables from our left box to the right box. Okay, so there is an option for you. You can transfer them one by one, or you can just choose them, and you can, transfer them at once. Okay, so these are the five variables. These are the five, important things about your sample you want to know. Now you have five buttons here. Again, all these buttons are not relevant to us. For instance, in statistics button, you don't need to choose anything, okay, at the moment. In the charts button, okay, you can choose any of the charts. I personally prefer pie charts. The information provided by them is very easier to understand. So I will choose pie charts. You can choose bar charts as well, but pie charts are very easily, comprehensible, very easily understandable. So I will choose pie charts here. Format, you don't need to do anything here. Style, again, not relevant at the moment. Bootstrap, again, not relevant at the moment. So out of all the five buttons, we just chose one particular thing. In the charts button, we and chose pie charts, and that's it. We did not make any other changes in any of the other options. Okay. So we first chose five variables that are relevant to personal information of our sample, and then we only made one addition by choosing pie charts in the charts button, and then we will click OK. So when you click OK, there is an output file. Okay, so there is an output file which provides information about each of the five questions in detail. So first of all, there is an information that tells you that there is no missing value. Why there is no missing value? Because I made it compulsory for my respondents to answer these questions in my data, because I collected data through electronic channel, and my respondents were not able to go to the next question without answering the first question. So that is why there is no missing value in my data. You can do the same with your data as well. Okay, so let us first analyze our the first variable, which is gender. So here, after inputting the information, you can see that the frequency of male in our data is 49%, and frequency of females in our data is close to 51%. So this is fairly very proportional data. So both the population groups, they are adequately represented in this particular sample. So this is a very good composition, that both male and female ratio is a pretty much reasonable, very comparable ratio. Now, if you go to the income, uh, table, you see that this is highly skewed table because there are plenty of people uh, whose income is lesser than 5,000 RMB. This is at the moment this is not good for our research. Why? Because the data is highly skewed towards one particular group of our sample, and another large group is the group of people who say that they don't want to share their income details. So if we add both of these two groups, they combine to make around 75% of my data. So this shows that three-fourth of my population, they have a either very low income or they don't want to share the income details. So this shows that very few my sample subjects, they have an income category which we can call as middle class or high middle class or rich or social status. So it means that when I generalize my results, I need to be very careful that because majority of my sample is not earning much, and there is a vast majority in my sample which don't want to share about their income details. So this is something which I need to be very much careful about when I generalize my results, because these results will not be generalizable to other income groups most probably. Now the third variable, you know, okay. So in this particular group, you will see that my sample is fairly well educated. There are 40 PhDs in my sample, which is great. There are 264, about 77% of my data. They are masters. They have done masters. So it means that my sample size, it is very educated, and 32 have done graduation, and only six people, they have their education is lesser than high school or lesser than high school. So it means that my sample is fairly educated, which is good. Okay, profession. Now we understand the reason why our income category is so less, because our majority of our sample belongs to students. They are students, they are full-time students. It means that they are not doing anything else. So our around 39%, 40% of our sample, they are students. So that is why this explains that why they have such low income. And then we have very few employees in the public sector. Very few of our respondents have their own business. Some of our respondents are full-time housewives, they are mothers. So it means that even in terms of profession, our sample is not evenly distributed. It is highly skewed towards the student sample, or the people who are doing some private jobs. So it means that we need to be careful in our sample, in the generalization of findings as well. Lastly, age. See, our age groups, our sample is very young, fairly young. Majority of our sample, age falls between 21 and 30. It means that our sample is fairly young. This also explains that why there are so many students and why the income is not that much, because your income is not that much when you are starting your career. So, and some of our respondents are also, they belong to the 31 and 40 response, age categories. So overall, our majority of our respondents, they fall between 21 and 40 age groups. So this is pie chart. This explains visually the composition of a sample. Male-female ratio is very good. The income ratio is again this highly skewed towards two samples. Prefer not to say is represented by green, and less than 5,000 is represented by this blue. Education, again, this is the large purple pie is the master's pie. This yellow, this sky blue is basically representing students, and this age is represented, majority is being represented by this 21 and 30. So this is your sample characteristics. So you can simply make a single table, and you can input all the information about your sample in that table, and you can just explain your table. So this is the first step. So when I will give you template of your research report, in the analysis section, The first thing you need to do is introduce your sample, give details of your sample, and you would need this table. You would need. I would recommend that you don't need to have 5 tables. You just need to make one big table where all the information about your sample characteristics should be presented there in a very reader friendly manner. So you don't need to report pie charts. It will just increase the length of your reports, and the information is already presented in the in the tables. So in your appendix part, you can use these pie charts to represent that this is the composition of your sample. Okay, so this is the first analysis that you need to do. You need to, explain your sample characteristics. So just by reading your sample characteristics, I can, understand, I can fathom that how much representative your sample is and how generalizable your findings are regarding your research. Okay, so this is the first important analysis you need to do. Is it clear? Pretty much easy, because in software you just need few clicks and it will be clear. So any questions so far before I start discussing a more difficult session? Any question? If you have any question, you can discuss with me, because then I will start discussing the third step of your analysis, which is checking for validity, which is a very difficult and tough, step. Okay, I will continue with my analysis section. Okay, so the third step is checking for validity. So after checking your sample characteristics, after writing the details of your sample characteristics, the next step is checking for validity of your research. So how will we check it? Okay, let me tell you the path. So again, you will go to the analyze. You will click the analyze button, and when analyze button will give you various options. You need to choose dimension reduction. Okay, when you choose when you get to the dimension reduction, there is an option of factor. Okay, so this is the path you need to choose: analyze, dimension reduction, and factor. Okay, so you open the factor. So this is the interface which pops up when you open factor. So this is a very it is slightly complex analysis. So I would like you to take note of this very seriously. So in this particular analysis, we don't do statistical tests on these nominal scale variables. So these variables like gender, income, education, profession, age, they are not part of factor analysis. Okay, so why? Because we are now checking the validity of these questions which are measuring our variables, which are in our theoretical framework. So the 9 questions, the 9 questions of narcissism, the 9 questions of Machiavellianism, the 8 questions of psychopathy, and 7 questions of our dependent variable COVID threat. Now, all these 33 questions will be subject to factor analysis, and we will determine their validity in our research. Now, as a matter of fact, validity test will measure whether these concepts, these questions, let me go to the questionnaire, yeah, whether these questions, they are measuring the concept of narcissism or not, whether these 9 questions are measuring the concept of Machiavellianism or not, whether these 8 questions are measuring the concept of psychopathy or not. Similarly, whether these 7 questions are encapsulating the concept of COVID threat perceptions or not. So this is the purpose of validity test. So the first step in validity test is basically collect all the questions where in your in your questionnaire apart from your personal information, which means that apart from nominal scale, all other questions in your data set, they will be transferred to the box of variables. So here we have just left behind the personal information variables like gender, like income, education, profession, and age. All other questions which were measuring our variables, which were measured on interval scale, so only those questions which are measured on interval scale, they will be subject to factor analysis. Okay. And the questions which are measured on a nominal scale or ordinal scale, the factor analysis cannot be performed on them. Okay, so this is a very important thing you need to keep in mind. So you cannot perform factor analysis on these nominal scale, variables. Okay, so you have transferred all the 33 questions, like these questions, the 9 questions of narcissism, the 9 questions of Machiavellianism, the 8 questions of psychopathy, and 7 questions of COVID threat to your variable box on the right hand side. Okay, so here you have 5 buttons. Each button has some very important functions. So let us open the first button, which is descriptives button. The first thing in your factor analysis which you need to establish is this particular test, which we call as KMO and Bartlett's test of sphericity. Now this is a very difficult name to pronounce, but its function is very simple. So let me just run this test and I will explain to you what does it stand for. So this particular test, KMO and Bartlett's test of sphericity, you just check this test and continue. So this test can be found in the descriptive portion. You just click the descriptive portion. The KMO and Bartlett's test of sphericity is right there in the bottom. You just click it, you just choose it and continue, and don't worry about rest of the buttons right now, because we just want to confirm this particular test beforehand. So just click OK and see that this is the first reading here in the factor analysis. So basically when you see the output in the left hand side of the output, they are basically the details of your test. So we just want to see our KMO and Bartlett's test which we have chosen. So we are just interested in this particular test. So we choose this test from our left hand side of our output, and we just want to read this test. Now reading table is also very important. You should know how to read the table as well. So in this particular table, there are plenty of values, but we are just interested in the first value, which is 0.702, and the last value. Let me try to, no. Okay, so we are just interested in the first value of the table and the last value of the table. Okay, so the first value of the table is 0.702, and it is Kaiser, Meyer, Olkin. These are 3 researchers who developed this test. Kaiser, Meyer, Olkin measure of sampling adequacy. So basically this particular test tells you that whether your sample size is large enough to run this kind of analysis. So this kind of statistical analysis can be run on the sample size which you have gathered for your research. So we have a sample size of 344 responses. So our sample size is sufficient. Why? Because the value of this test should be greater than 0.6. So just keep this in mind, that the value of this test should be greater than 0.6. So our value is 0.702. So it is sufficiently greater than the required value of 0.6. So we can say with confidence that our sample is large enough to run this kind of analysis. So this is the first hurdle. This is the first thing we want to ensure in our analysis. The second particular value which we are interested in is Bartlett's test of sphericity. This test tells us that whether the variables in our model, like these are the variables. Yeah, these are the variables. The variables in our model, they are related to each other or not. Because if they are not related to each other at all, then we cannot run this kind of analysis. So this particular value it should be lesser than 0.05. This is basically your p-value. So this value should be lesser than 0.05. If this value is lesser than 0.05, it means that your variables are related to each other, and you can have a certain structure, a certain kind of structure and of factors in your analysis. But if this value is greater than 0.05, it means that your variables are not related to each other at all. So basically, there will be no relationship between variables, and you cannot run this kind of analysis on your data. So it means that both of our checks, both of our hurdles, they are clear. We want our KMO test to have value greater than 0.6. The value is 0.702, which is good. It means that our sample size is adequate. We want our Bartlett's test of sphericity to have a value lesser than 0.05. It is lesser than 0.05. It means that our variables are related to each other in some way. So we will have some form of a factor solution for our data. So both of these tests are, they qualify. We qualify to run this kind of analysis. So we just want to make sure that we qualify both of these tests. So this is the first thing we need to do, that whether we are capable of running factor analysis, whether we are capable of running these kind of statistical analysis for our data or not. So we just confirm that yes, we are qualified to run this statistical analysis. So we will again go towards the analyze portion. We will again choose dimension reduction. Again, we will choose factor, and then we will move towards the rest of the buttons. So we don't need KMO test again. So we will uncheck it because we have confirmed our data is qualified, our sample size is qualified to do this kind of analysis. So we will just uncheck it. We don't want to run this analysis again. Okay, now let us move towards the second button, which is extraction. In the second button, this is the default. This is the default view of the window. Okay, so we just want to make one addition here, which is checking the scree plot. We just check the scree plot box. That's it. So we will just check the scree plot box, and we will not make any other changes in our data. Okay, so we will just check the scree plot, and that's it. We continue. And for rest of the buttons, we don't want to make any changes at the moment. We will just run the analysis, and I will show you what we have analyzed. Okay, so just go towards these, left hand side of your, analysis window. So we just want to read two important tests here. First one is scree plot, and the second one is total variance explained table. So let us first read the total variance explained table. So the total variance explained table, we just want to read the total variance explained table. I just click the total variance explained table, and here comes the total variance explained table. Now there is a lot of information here. You don't want to confuse yourself with the information. I just want you to focus on this particular column, the total column. This is the column which is giving you eigenvalues. Okay, so if you see that the eigenvalues greater than 1, just count for how many components the eigenvalues are greater than 1. Okay, you just see for the first component the eigenvalue is 6.5, for second component the eigenvalue is 4.7, for third it is 2.5, and it continues to be greater than 1 for the component 10. So for 10 components the eigenvalue is greater than 1 for 10 components. Okay, so for 10 components the eigenvalue is greater than 1. Okay, just stop it right there. You don't have to worry at the moment. Just stop it right there. Okay, so just count the number of components which have eigenvalues greater than 1. So there are 10 components which have eigenvalues greater than 1. Okay, so what is this telling you? This is basically telling you the number of factors in your data. So we have three methods. to determine the number of factors in our data. The first method is eigenvalues. Okay, so just forget about the rest of the methods. The first method is eigenvalue. So the first method is telling you that there are 10 factors in your research. Now this is problematic. Why? Because we, in our theoretical framework, we said that there are only 4 variables in our research, 3 IVs and 1 dependent variable. But the first method of determining the number of factors in your research is telling us that there are 10 factors in our research. Now, number of factors, now they are, which is recommended by this particular method, the number of eigenvalues method, it is too many. 10 factors are too many because we have only 33 questions. So it means that on average, 3 questions per factor are designated. But we basically, in our questionnaire design, we basically assigned 9 questions to measure our first variable, narcissism. We assigned 9 questions to measure Machiavellianism. We assigned 8 questions to measure psychopathy, and we assigned 7 questions to measure COVID threat perception. So we assigned 7, 8, 9 questions to measure our 4 variables. But eigenvalues method is saying that the number of factors in our research are 10. This is an extreme situation. Now, you will often face such kind of situations. You don't need to worry at the moment. Okay, let us discuss the second method. The second method of discussing our, determining the number of factors in our research is scree plot. So just go to this, the left-hand side of your output and click on scree plot. You will find this particular, plot. So we can also determine the number of factors from our scree plot as well. So just see the dots in our scree plot, which are which are not in line, which are showing greater variation. So just see that these dots, these points are, they are fairly in same line. There is a small bend here. Okay, so it means that we need to count the number of dots, the number of points which are after a bend, which are after a big bend. So but this is a very small bend. I won't count from here. I would say that this is a large bend. Okay, so I will count the number of dots after this dot, the number of dots after this particular point. So the number of dots after this particular point are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is this is the point where these 6 dots are different from other dots, because other dots are fairly in the same range, but these 6 dots are they are highly different. They are they are pretty distant from these other dots. So the scree plot is basically measuring your questions on the eigenvalues. So here on the left hand side we have eigenvalues, on the on your x-axis we have the questions. So it is showing that there are at least 6 factors in your data, because these 6 factors, they have high eigenvalues. Okay, so these 6 factors from here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they have high eigen values in your data. So this is the second method. So the scree plot method is telling us that we have 6 factors in our research. Okay, but the third method, which is our theoretical framework, is very categorical in this particular aspect. Our theoretical frameworks suggest us that there are only 4 factors in your research, and stick to it. We want us to stick to our theoretical framework. We don't want to increase the number of factors at this particular point. Okay, because this will disturb our whole theoretical foundation of our research. If there is an addition of factor, if narcissism is divided into 3 factors, okay, this will have an effect on your research, because the original developers of this scale, they conceptualize narcissism as a single dimension. There are no further dimensions in this particular situation. So we don't want to have more factors than what we have selected for our theoretical framework. So we just want four factors for our theoretical framework. That's it. We don't want 10 factors like shown in the eigenvalues plot. We don't want six factors as demonstrated by scree plot. We want just four factors which are shown in our theoretical framework as well. And if you see our scree plot, you see that the four factors, they have eigenvalues greater than 2 as well. So even if you choose scree plot from here, you will see that 1, 2, 3, 4. There is a probability that we will get a four factor solution like we have conceptualized for our theoretical framework. So let us force this software to give us that solution that we want. We want a four factor solution. Why? Because we have four factors in our theoretical framework. So let us force this software to get us a four factor solution. So I will again go to dimension reduction. I will go to the factor. I will go to the extraction button again, and then I will fix the number of factors. I will fix the number of factors to be 4. I am forcing this because this is my ideal situation. I can't be increasing my number of factors here. I don't want to reduce my number of factors here as well. So I will uncheck scree plot. I have seen the scree plot. I don't want to see it again. I don't want to populate my analysis output. So that's it. I will just choose the number of factors which are in my, the number of variables which are in my theoretical framework, and I will continue. Then I will choose the other, I will make choices from the other buttons as well. The third button is rotation. Okay, in rotation button, you have plenty of options. Varimax, direct oblivion, Quatimax, Equamax, Promax. You don't need to read, you don't need to, choose these methods. Most of the times we choose between Varimax and direct oblivion. Why? The difference between these two methods is this, that Varimax assumes that the correlation between variables is very less. The correlation between variables, like the correlation between narcissism and COVID threat, would be less. The correlation between Machiavellianism and psychopathy would be less. So Varimax assumes that the correlation between variables is very less, and direct oblivion assumes that there is some sort of correlation between variables. So most of the times, some researchers, they go for Varimax by assuming that there is no correlation, very minimum correlation. Some researchers go with direct oblivion. Most of the times, I would say 99 out of 100 times, the results are same. So I prefer going with Varimax just to make this assumption that the variables are not correlated with each other. So I would go with Varimax. So I just chose Varimax on the basis of this assumption that the variables are not highly related with each other. The variables have minimal correlations with each other, and just choose and just continue. In the scores button, we don't need to make any change. So in this whole analysis, the scores button is the only button where you don't need to make any changes, where you don't need to make any, you don't need to make any choices in the score button. The options button. Here you need to make two very important changes. First of all, you need to check this box, sorted by size. Okay, why? Because we want to see that which questions are more important and which questions are less important. So that is why we have gone for this choice. The second is suppress small coefficients. Here we will have a limitation of 0.40. Why? It is like your scores in your final semester, like you have the students who score below 60, they are graded as failed, I think, or 65. So students who score lesser than 65, they are scored, they are graded as failed. Similarly, those questions in our analysis which will have a value below 0.4, we don't want those values. We just want to suppress those values. Okay, so any question which will have a value below 0.4, that value will be suppressed. It will be easier for us to identify that particular question, and we will delete that particular question from our analysis as well. Okay, so you need to make these two choices. Continue. Okay, so again, I will go through in descriptive part. We just checked for KMO and Bartlett's test of sphericity that was done before doing the analysis. Now we don't want any other choice from this particular button. Extraction, we have fixed the number of factors to be 4. We have unchecked scree plot. We have unchecked eigenvalues. In rotation, we have gone for varimax because we are assuming that the variables are not correlated, or even if they are related, there is minimal correlation. We did not make any changes in the scores button. In the options button, we just chose sorted by size, and we just chose press smaller coefficients and just get the value of 0.4 here. Okay, so we will click OK here, and this will run our analysis. And from our output, we are interested in this particular we are interested in this particular table, which is named as rotated component matrix. So all other tables, they are not very important at the moment. We are just interested in one table, which is rotated component matrix. So just click on this table, rotated component matrix. So this is the rotated component matrix. Now this gives us the factor analysis. Now this will determine the validity of your questions. Now I'm afraid this is not a very good solution. Why? Because I would ideally want all the questions measuring narcissism to be grouped together. But in this particular situation, there are questions of Machiavellianism, there are questions of psychopathy and Machiavellianism which are grouped together with narcissism. I don't want this in my data. It means that there is something wrong with my questions. COVID fear questions. Ideally, I would not want my questions to be loading in any other factor. I just want them to be staying in their own factor. But the question number 6 of COVID, it is also measuring the factor number 3, which is our Machiavellianism factor. So our this particular factor, this particular question is measuring 2 concepts at the same time, which is not good. And this question is measuring 3 concepts at the same time. See, COVID fear 7 question, it is measuring the concept number 2, the concept number 3, and the variable number 4. I don't want my questions to be measuring more than one concept. They should be only in single table. Again, in the Machiavellianism concept, all questions of Machiavellianism, they should be grouped together. But unfortunately, the questions of narcissism, the questions of psychopathy are shown in Machiavellianism as well. I want my questions to have a value above 0.4. If they have value lesser than 0.4, sorry, not 0.04. If they have values lesser than 0.4, it means that they have failed to show up validity in my research. So they are either not understood properly by my researcher, by my respondents, or I have not been able to make them explain my question. So these are the 2 questions which have failed to show validity of any kind. In psychopathy, I would want all the 8 questions of psychopathy grouped together, but unfortunately, this is not happening. Even the question number 6 of narcissism, what is it doing here? It should be with its own group. It should be with its own items. So there are plenty of concerns in the validity of my questionnaire. So how to fix these concerns? So there are again 3 steps here. I would delete some items now. Now, in order to fix my questionnaire, in order to fix my research instrument, I need to delete items. Okay, so I would start deleting items. Now, these items which will be deleted will not be considered further for any analysis. Okay, they will be deleted forever from any further analysis. So any questions so far? Any ambiguity? or is it too difficult for you to follow? I hope if you listen to the recordings, it will be easier for you to make some sense. So any questions so far? Any issues? Okay, I will continue with the analysis. Okay, so how to fix this particular situation, because there are lots of validity concerns. The first step is to remove those items, to remove those questions which are not loaded in any factor. So those questions which have value lesser than zero point 0.4, they will be removed from any further analysis, like the question number 5 of psychology. Let me go to the questionnaire and read this particular question. Question number 5 of psychopathy. This particular question will not be part of my analysis, because this question failed to load in any of the factor. It does not have value greater than zero point 0.4. So I will simply go dimension reduction factor, and I will remove it from here. I don't have to remove it from variable view. Okay, so I don't have to remove it from here. I don't have to remove the psychopathy from here. I can simply remove it from this particular situation. I can remove it from this box and send it back. So this will not be analyzed further. Okay, other thing, psychopathy 5 was the question which was not loaded, and Machiavellianism 1 and Machiavellianism 8. These questions were also not loaded. So I would not delete all the questions together, because sometimes it happens that if you delete one question, the other questions, they fit nicely into their places. So I will just delete them one by one. I will again go to the rotated component matrix and see. Yes, again Machiavellianism A 1 and 8, they are not loading. So I will again delete one by one. I will delete Machiavellianism 1 and run the analysis again. Choose the factor the rotated component matrix, and see again Machiavellianism 8 is not showing as well again. So I will delete now Machiavellianism 8. Again, I will choose the rotated component matrix and see. Now there aren't any questions which are not loading in any factor. So the first step is to remove those items which have not loaded in any factor and which have values lesser than 0.4. Okay, the second step is to remove those items which are loading in two factors. Now I am cleaning my data. I am deleting those questions which are not valid. So remove those items which are loading in two factors, but remove only those items which have a difference between the values lesser than 0.2. Okay, let me show you. For instance, this particular questions, COVID fear 6, it is loaded on concept number 2 and concept number 3. What is the difference in values between these two? The difference is lesser than 0.2. The difference is just, I think, 0.7, 0.77. Yeah, something like this, 0.077. So difference is lesser than 0.2. So for instance, if this value of 5.28, if this value was 0.328, so the difference in between 0.601 and 0.328 would be larger than 0.2. So we would not delete this particular question. But now the difference between these two values, because they are loading in two different concepts, in two different factors, and the difference between them is lesser than 0.2, we need to delete this particular question as well. So COVID fear 6 will be deleted from our analysis. COVID fear 6. We'll delete this from our analysis, and we will run the analysis again and see whether our factor solution has improved or not. Not at all. Again, COVID fear 7, the difference between these two, it is being loaded in two factors, and the difference between the values is lesser than 0.2. We will again delete this particular question. So COVID fear 7 will be deleted as well. We will delete COVID fear 7. We will run the analysis again. Okay, again, there is a situation here. Narcissism 6 is loaded in two factors, factor number 1 and factor number 4. But although it is negative, but we will consider it as an absolute value. The difference between them is 0.0025. So we don't want to include this in our data as well. So we will delete narcissism 6 again. So narcissism 6 is here. We will delete it. We'll run the analysis again. We will go to the rotated component matrix again, and we will see again. Okay, so psychopathy 8. It is again loaded on two concepts. Concept number 2, which is Machiavellianism, and concept number 4, which is psychopathy. And the difference between two values is lesser than 0.2. So we will delete psychopathy 8 as well. So psychopathy 8 is deleted. We'll run the analysis again. We will go to the rotated component matrix, and now our data is much cleaner. Okay, but still there are problems. The problem is this, that in the narcissism group, there are questions regarding Machiavellianism. In the narcissism group, there are questions regarding psychopathy. So we need to remove these questions as well, because they are not being loaded in their own, group. They should be with their own group. They should be with the items of their own group. They should not be in the another group. So this is the third step. Remove those items which are loading in another group. Okay, so those questions which are loading in another group, we need to remove them from our data as well. So we will again delete them one by one. We will start with our factor number 1. These are all the questions of narcissism. Narcissism 2 is the most important question because it has the highest weight, 0.775. The Mac 3 is the question we need to remove first. So we again go there, we will delete Mac 3, we will choose it, and we just send it back to its original box. We run the analysis again. We see that is there any improvement? Narcissism is purified? No, it is not purified, because psychopathy 1 and Mac 4 and Mac 9, they have again changes. So Mac 9 is not loaded in any factor. So first of all, we will delete Mac 9. Mac 9. Where is Mac 9? Here is Mac 9. We will delete it. We will run the analysis again. We will go to the rotated component matrix and check narcissism again. Okay, psychopathy 1 and Mac 4 again. Psychopathy 1 is with the group of narcissism. It should not be there. Let us delete it. Let us send it back. Run the analysis again. And again, Mac 4 is there. We need to remove Mac 4 again. So we have removed Mac 4. Let's see. Now this scale is purified. So these are the questions of narcissism which are actually measuring narcissism. So there were 9 questions to measure narcissism, but at the end we have these 7 questions which are measuring narcissism, and these questions are actually measuring narcissism. So there is no ambiguity, there is no doubt that they are not measuring narcissism. We have evidence, we have an empirical evidence, we have shown with our analysis that these questions are actually measuring narcissism because they are loading together. COVID fear, these questions are measuring COVID fear. The question number 2 of COVID fear is measuring COVID fear the most. Let us read the question number 2 of COVID fear. The question number 2 is, it makes me uncomfortable to think about coronavirus 19. So this is the most important question. So this question is the most important question. Overall, out of 7 questions, these 5 questions, they are measuring the COVID fear. So these 2 variables are purified. Only questions relevant to them are present there. Now let us go to the third variable, Machiavellianism. Okay, so this variable is polluted with different, variables. Like Mac 7 is there. Okay, it is measuring Machiavellianism. But what is this variable doing here? Narcissism 9. The 9th question of narcissism is present in the Machiavellianism group. It should not be there. So let us delete it from there. Narcissism 9. So narcissism 9 will be deleted from the here. Okay, run the analysis again. We go there. we see that, okay, Mac 7, Mac 5, Psych 4, Mac 6, Mac 2, Psych 3. Again, two questions from psychopathy scale are present with the Machiavellianism. Again, problematic. We need to remove them from our uh, factor. So we need to remove which question? Psych 4. Psych 4 will be deleted, will be removed. We will run the analysis again. We will see, is it okay? Mac 7, Mac 6, Mac 5, Mac 2, no. Psych 3 is again grouped together with the Mac 6. So we will remove Psych 3 again. Okay, Psych 3. Okay, run the analysis again. Check the rotated component matrix. See, in the Machiavellianism group, there are only 4 questions left. All other questions are not considered from further analysis. So these questions are the most valid questions. Other questions were weakening. They were questioning the validity of our scale. So we have removed them. And out of 8 questions of psychopathy, we are left with only 3 questions: psychopathy 7, psychopathy 2, and psychopathy 6. So this is the final solution, because now these are only the valid questions in our questionnaire. So most of the times, some students, they ask me that whether they can handpick some questions. For instance, if there are 20 questions in a scale, can they choose 10 questions, 12 questions? I always ask them that no, you don't need to choose like that, because in the data purification stage, there will be further deletion of your questions. So we have deleted. So see how many questions we have deleted. So there are 7 questions in narcissism. There are 5 questions in COVID. 7 plus 5 is 12. And there are 4 questions that make them 16. And then there are 3 questions, 19 questions. So out of 33 questions, 33 original questions, we are left with only 19 questions. Ideally, you should not delete more than 1/3 of your questionnaire. You should not delete. Okay. So ideally, 1/3 of the questionnaire can be deleted if you're going for factor analysis, if you're going for validity of your research. But anything more than 1/3, it is problematic. It is it is not good for your research. So in our research, out of 33, we have removed 14 questions. So we have deleted 14 questions are deleted. So is it good? Does it justify our analysis? Does it justify the validity concerns? Okay, it is okay. I would say that the 1/3 is a pretty stringent, pretty strict criteria. It is okay that we want at the end of the day a valid scale. So this is the valid scale. So the results generated from this scale, they will be more believable. Okay, so ideally you should not be deleting questions which are more than 1/3 of your overall questions. So like if you have 33 questions, you should not delete more than 11 questions in your questionnaire, but we have deleted like close to 14 questions. So it means that lots of questions in our scale, they were not valid. So now we have a valid scale, we have a valid questionnaire. Uh, so we will only consider this particular scale for our analysis in the next stage. Okay, so in our next stage, I will start from this particular step. So what would be the next step? We will discuss in our next session. Our next step is checking for reliability. So we have determined the validity of our analysis. So we will only choose this particular scale. So we will only report this particular table. I can copy this table and I will put it here. And this is the table which will make to my research report. And I need to make further changes in this table. So I will show in my next session what further additions I need to make in this particular table. And but this is the end result of factor analysis. So any question regarding you know today's session? Any question? Because your this week's discussion question activity is about your uh, factor analysis. The lessons we have learned in today's session, they are basically part of your this week's discussion question activity. Any question? Okay, so let me stop the sharing. I will get back to your slides now. Okay, so these are your slides. Let me get to your discussion question of this week. Let me explain you the discussion question of this week. Okay, so this week's discussion question is very important. It is about the analysis section, which we have discussed in today's session. The SPSS data file is attached in the resources, and you, along with the theoretical framework document, to identify variables for your guidance, and you are required to do the following. The first thing you need to do is you need to use that SPSS data file to report sample characteristics of data using the analysis tools which we just learned in today's session. Make a single table where the all information can be presented. Do you think that sample is well representative? You need to argue whether the sample is well representative or not. Secondly, you need to conduct a factor analysis. Evaluate your factor solution. Give reasons for this kind of solution. And you need to refer to the theoretical framework document as well to determine the number of variables in your research and whether the number of variables determined by scree plot or by eigenvalues, they are appropriate, or you are going with your own, the theoretical framework with determining the number of factors for your research. Which questions do you think you need to remove? Show a table. Give reasons why you think these questions need to be removed. Okay. If you are not sure, you just go through the lecture again. Go through the recording of the lecture again, and then you can be more clear that which questions you need to remove them and why you need to remove them. Lastly, you need to compare the findings with the 3 other students of your section and evaluate any differences in interpretation. The deadline for initial response is 20th November, and deadline for evaluations is 22nd November. And this week's discussion question activity is very important if you want to have a smooth learning of your software, and if you want to have analyze your data properly as well. Okay, any question? Anything which is not clear? Okay, so I will recommend going through the recording again. I will recommend that you go through the recording and ask me any question which is not clear. I'm sure that when you do this discussion question, this week's discussion question, you will be in a better position to learn whatever is being described in the lecture. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.